How's it going, guys? 2 seconds in and we already got murderers on this mountain. That's how you know it's truly authentic. How's it going, guys, and welcome back to another video. I hope you're having a lovely and wonderful day so far. As you can see, we're back outside again, and it's for a very, very special reason. When you think of cinema cameras, there are a lot of bad aspects to it, as I put out in my video a little while ago about why cinema cameras suck. But that wasn't entirely fair. There are a lot of benefits and positives to a cinema camera. Like, for example, the fact that you can be able to rig it out to however you want it to be. And one of those parts of a rig are lenses. And when you're looking at cinema lenses, they can get very expensive very, very quickly. And the question is it even worth paying that extra amount of money where there are cheaper, maybe more plasticky lenses available, but they do the same job for a much cheaper price, right? Well, in today's video, we're gonna figure that out by going out into the field, literally, and shooting some clips, and I'm gonna let you guys know whether I think a cheaper lens or a more expensive lens would fit your rig better. Also, shout out to, let me make sure I don't get this wrong. Shout out to Casper Graham from Finland. He commented on one of my videos when we met in Helsinki. I saw the cool backpack that you had that had your FX6 rig in there, and needless to say, I went to a shop and I bought it. I got the Tenba Cinelux backpack, 21-inch. So, just saying, you made this possible. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, isn't it kind of the same thing with photography lenses where more expensive just means you get a sharper, better image? Technically, yes, but also kind of no. There are several different key factors that play a role in the price of a cinema lens, because unlike a photography lens, a cinema lens has a couple of different bits to it. Take this Samyang, for example. Unlike a photography lens, this actually has a design that's meant for teeth gears that are used by focus motors and focus devices to pull on the lens, which will allow it to focus rather than having a rubber grip that you would use to turn by hand. The idea is that you're going to have an assistant camera person, or AC, who's going to be pulling focus wirelessly or on site through the use of a focus motor, which is why it has the gears. Another thing that you'll notice, unlike a photography lens, is that there are markings all over here. You have markings for your T-stops, as well as markings for your distance. That way, if you're not using a monitor, or if you're using a camera that can't tell you the distance, you can be able to look at the lens and be able to see for yourself, assuming that it's properly calibrated to your camera to give you the exact distance. Another big thing that separates cinema lenses from regular photography lenses is focus breathing. Now, focus breathing occurs due to the design of most lenses, where when you focus from something that's really far away to something really close, it will shrink down almost the outside of the image in order to focus on what you want it to focus to. And it does the inverse when you're focusing from something really close to something really far away, expanding and contracting, hence the term focus breathing. Now, you're not really going to notice this in photography due to the fact that, well, you just need to focus on that one point for a second to get the shot, and then you're done. But when it comes to filmmaking and making videos, you're gonna notice it, and it's gonna become very, very annoying as you focus from one subject to another in a scene. And finally, the last big thing that you'll notice is the fact that I said T-stops instead of F-stops. Now, when it comes to F versus T-stop, the only difference is that an f-stop is an approximation or a really educated guess as to what it should be outputting light-wise, while a t-stop is the transmission. So it's a calculated formula that's taken from the rear of the lens to the sensor. T-stops are a lot more accurate than f-stops, so you'll be able to have a consistent output of light from one lens to another in a set if they are the same t-stops, compared to lenses that are f-stops that could be drastically different from one lens to another. What does that mean? Well, if I use a set of lenses that have T-stops, chances are if I have it all set to T1.5, they will be a consistent brightness if I swap from one lens to another. Meanwhile, with a set of lenses that are f-stop, there could be drastically different light outputs from the lenses, even if you bought two of the exact same one. So to sum everything up, a cinema lens has gears that are designed to be used with follow focus system. They have the ability to limit or get rid of focus breathing, and they have T-stops, which give you a much more consistent light output. Now you might be saying to yourself, oh, okay, cool, that's great and all. I know what the difference between a cinema and photography lens is, but is a more expensive one gonna be better than a cheaper one? Should I be saving my money or should I be saving up? Well, that brings in our contenders for today. For our budget end, we have the Samyang VDSLR2 35mm cine lens. Now this also goes by the Rokinon DSX brands. They're essentially the same thing. It depends on if you're in Europe or the States, but these are pretty much as budget cinema as you can get outside of other companies like 7 Artisan. With these going anywhere from about 200 bucks used online to about 400 to 500 brand new, you could get an entire set of 6 of them from B&H for only $1,500, at least if you're going with Sony E-mount like I am, which is an absolute steal. It's incredible that you could be able to get them all for that price. Meanwhile, on the slightly more expensive side, and by slightly I mean a lot more expensive, the Digio 35mm Vespid Prime lens. Now, this is pretty much what I would consider to be the standard for cinema lenses, at least on the more expensive part. I know there are going to be some people out there that are going to say, oh, well, you can get your hands on Atlas Orion lenses that are 35 to 60 grand a pop, or you can get yourself Leica cinema lenses that go for around 40 grand on average. But the reality of the situation is lenses are expensive, whether it's $500 or $5,000. So make sure you keep that in mind before you're about to go to the comments section and say, oh, that's not the most expensive lens in the world. That doesn't count. It's not a fair fight. It's expensive. And I say that because this lens by itself is $1,700 or around $1,300 to $1,500, depending on if you're in the States or Europe. I'm in Germany, so I got the thick end of the shaft. In other words, for the price of this one Cine Prime lens, I could have bought an entire set of Samyang lenses. So keep that in mind for this comparison. We're gonna see if the budget lens can compete with the expensive one. And we're gonna have several different tests that are gonna be involved. For one, we're gonna be testing the focused breathing. Then we're gonna be doing a test with my lovely wife, where we're gonna have her as a live subject to see how it fares on skin tones. And finally, we're gonna have a side-by-side comparison with a couple of clips out here in the beautiful forest on the mountains, and let you guys determine whether or not it's worth getting a Samyang or a whole set or a single Digio. All right, so I think we have finally found a pretty nice spot to set up. It's about like 1, maybe 2 miles in, 1.5, 2 miles or so. Backpack's still doing pretty good, so far so good on that. And let's finally set up shop and go into some more detail about these lenses. All right, so now that we're set up, let's get a little more in-depth on each of these lenses. So for the Samyang VDSLR2, it is what's called a rehoused lens. It's a type of cinema lens where you have a photography lens that people enjoy but want to use for cinema. So you just take off the shell, slap a cine one on there, and keep the photography guts inside, which isn't a bad idea. It's one of the reasons why it's so cheap, because it's essentially the exact same as its photography counterpart. But one problem that can occur with that is that you might deal with a lot of the issues that come with a photography lens because it's still the same internals. That being said, the overall quality isn't too bad. It's definitely plasticky. I'm not a big fan at all about the fact that it's still a kind of a clip-on cover. I'm not a big fan of those. They come off very easily, you know, just a little bit of force and there you go, it's gone. So it definitely could come off in your camera bag. I would be pretty concerned about dropping it. It could do some damage, but all in all, it's not too bad. The focus throw is really short. It's only about maybe 90, 115 or so degrees. I'll double check when I get back home and edit this, but it's a very short focus throw. And you can tell because it goes from 1 foot to 1.5, 2, that's fine, 3 feet, and then straight to 10, and then infinity in the same stroke, which is going to be difficult if you're trying to focus on a subject that's kind of far away, because how can you tell what 5, 7.5 feet is in such a short gap? So it's going to focus very quickly and kind of defeat the purpose of having a nice cinema lens. So now let's look at the Digio Vespid Prime and see what the quality is on this one. Now for the Digio Vespid Primes, it is almost kind of a night and day feel in your hands alone. For one, it's a lot heftier, roughly about 2.1 pounds. And given its small factor, it's really compact, which is nice, but very, very dense. It's pretty much entirely metal outside of the plastic rear and front cap, which, by the way, the cap is a marginal improvement. And I say that because while it is a regular cover-on cap, it's still plasticky, and let's just say they're both going to come off in your camera bag, so be careful. But outside of that, the element is just beautiful. Everything about this just screams durable, and if I dropped it, I would feel a little more comfortable than if I had dropped the Samyang. And if you look very closely, you'll see that there's 2 sets of markings on either side. So you have one on the left side, known as the operator side, and then one on the right side, known as the AC or assistant cameraman side, which is great because if you have more than one person working with you, it allows you both to be able to tell where your markings are. And you can just see how many additional markings there are, which is really, really nice. It has a 270-degree focus throw. So it's going to be a lot easier to focus precisely on whatever you're trying to put your focus on compared to the Samyang. And ultimately, at least if you were to just hold this in your hands and I had to pick a winner in the quality category, Digio Vespid Prime is getting it all the way. This was kind of an obvious, easy one. And let's face it, if you're going based off of quality alone, you wouldn't bother watching this video. You just get the Vespid Primes or an even more expensive lens brand. What we're here for is the actual performance. So let's take a look at what we're gonna be using to test these lenses out on. We got our tried and true trusty FX6 cinema camera with the Atmos Shinobi for false color to make sure we have every variable taken care of. Exposure is down. That way we can focus purely on the quality of the glass in front of it. And you can see that we have a little bit of an adapter here. It's an EF mount adapter, as both of these lenses are EF. Now, the Samyang also comes in E mount, RF, L mount, and several other mounts that I can't think of. So you can buy it specifically for your camera. Meanwhile, the Digio Vespid Primes are only PL or EF mount. You can swap them though, but if you plan on rocking with these, just be prepared to carry an adapter with you. I'm pretty sure there are some people who are just filled with anxiety right now with how open the sensor is in the forest, but don't worry. That's all I have to say, don't worry about it. So let's begin with the lens test. Hello, and how's it going from the studio? So, I'm gonna cut straight to the chase. Camera A was the Digio Vespid Primes, while camera B was the Samyang lens. Now, which one do I think is personally better in my opinion? Well, if I'm gonna be honest, there's a little bit of a it depends, but don't worry, I definitely have a definitive winner that I'm gonna build a collection out of, while the other one is unfortunately gonna have to either be rented or just not used at all because it's gonna be sold. So first, let's get down to what the experience was like with the lenses. Now, surprisingly, the Samyang was really enjoyable to use. The lens was a little bit lighter, which meant that the camera was a little more back heavy, and it gave me the ability to have a little more control as far as where I was pointing my camera, especially when I had it tilted up in the air. Now, the Digio wasn't too heavy, but at 2 pounds, you can definitely feel the difference between that and the Samyang. It being a whole stop brighter allowed me to get a very dreamy, almost as if though it came built in with a pro mist filter inside of the lens, which is really incredible because you can get a really nice, shallow, dreamy aesthetic look without really having to put in any effort at all, as long as you have it wide open. Saying that, wide open, I think the Digio has the advantage because while you do get a more shallow depth of field with the Samyang, the Digio just has much better bokeh balls, and at the end of the day, if you're shooting wide open, it's for the bokeh. And while the Samyang did have relatively nice bokeh, it was really apparent that even in the center, it was kind of oval shaped, and towards the outside, it was straight cat eyes, if not borderline footballs. Meanwhile, the Digio was able to have near perfect circles in the center and circles towards the corners that weren't all too bad looking. As far as the Digio is concerned, is that with the focus throw being 270 degrees, I felt very confident that when I looked at something and I focused on it, I would get that focus in one shot, not only smoothly, but quickly as well, which is something I can't say for the Samyang, because while I was able to get smoother focus pulls, it was more or less due to the fact that I was afraid that with such a short throw, I was going to completely miss my target. And while it's nice to have really smooth pulls, if I'm spending almost double the amount of time, as you can see in the clips, trying to get focus, it's not really worth it in the end. And that's pretty much all I care about as far as testing lenses go. I know I could go way more in depth as far as all the different characteristics of each lens, but honestly, I'd rather watch Jared Undone video because he kind of has that down pat. I'm here to tell you about the experience, and the experience between these two lenses is surprisingly really good. Now, the Digio Vespid Prime, no shocker there, it is incredible to use. You feel very confident using it and you feel like you are the man. But with the Samyang, once you start using it, you get your focus on point, you completely forget that this is a $300 to $500 lens, which is kind of crazy to think of. You completely forget that you're using a cheaper lens because the image quality is so good that you don't really care. You're just lost in the moment. And I think that proves just how amazing of a lens that it is. Any tool that allows you to forget that you even have it and just focus on what you're doing is a great tool in my book. So if you're into the more dreamy, aesthetic, shallowy look, a little more vintage feeling, and you like to be able to buy your lenses and actually afford them, 100%, I would go with the Samyang. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's a fantastic lens. So why do I still want the Digio Vespid Prime? Well, I think it's kind of in the same regards as to why someone would want a Rolls Royce or a Lambo when you could just get a Corolla. A Corolla is cheap, dependable, reliable, and it gets the job done. It does 95% of what you need it to do. But once you hop into a Rolls Royce and feel the comfort and class, or once you get behind a Lambo and feel the G-forces, you kind of start to understand just a little bit. And it's difficult to explain, not because, stereotypical YouTuber, oh, it's a feeling, but I mean as in you need to have one in your hands to feel how buttery smooth it is. And it might not even make sense then until you attach it to a camera and pull focus and realize, oh wow, this is actually really easy to do. So in my eyes, I think the Digio Vespids are the winner. Now I know a lot of people are going to hem and haw and say, well, you're just wasting your money because, well, again, I'm going to stress this cost as much as 6 of these. But at the end of the day, and when you think about it, it really just comes down to what you personally prefer. Now, of course, I could get myself an entire set of Samyangs. I could get a set of Samyangs for every single Digio Vespid I plan on getting. But at the end of the day, is it going to make me feel like I want to shoot? So with all that being said, if any of that made any sense at all, I am going to be going with the Digio Vespid Primes because they just give me the sharpness that I enjoy and that I like, and I can be able to build upon that. I can add pro mist filters if I need to, and I can change things up in post if I need to, so that way I can have the look that I want. But I always enjoy having a good base to start from. I enjoy the focus throw. I enjoy the smoothness in the construction, the quality of it, and it just feels great in the hands. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to dog on the Samyang. If you are someone who's looking for a set of budget cine lenses, go for the Samyangs. They're not bad at all. If you're someone who's trying to get your hands on a retro lens, boom, here you go right here. Dirt cheap, and they give you the look that you want because of the shallow depth of field and the rather unusually cat's eye like bokeh. That's all I have to say here today. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed. It helps motivate me so much so I can make more of this juicy content for you guys. And without further ado, whether you are a team cheap or a team expensive, I want both of you guys to have a fantastic rest of your day. Peace out.